On this episode of Newt's World, my guest today is Congresswoman Maria Salazar. She proudly represents Florida's 27th Congressional District, serving the people of South Florida. And I have to say, I'm particularly proud because she represents my daughter and my son-in-law. She currently serves on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the House Committee on Small Business. She's really remarkable. I've gotten to know her over the years. She is a 5-time Emmy Award-winning journalist. She has spent her career holding the corrupt and powerful accountable. She's gone toe-to-toe with Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro, Chile's Augusto Pinochet, and most notably, Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. Starting at the age of 22, she's worked for every major U.S. Spanish-language broadcasting network. She's joining me today to discuss Venezuela, her new book, Dignity, Not Citizenship, The Truth About Immigration No One Is Telling You, and her proposed legislation, the Dignity Act. So I'm really pleased to welcome my guest, Congresswoman Maria Salazar. Welcome and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
Oh, even more pleased. And thank you for those kind words. Yes, I do represent your daughter and your son-in-law, and I am delighted to be with you because when you presented Contract with America, I was a rookie journalist and I admired so much what you did after how many years, 435 years of Dems control in the House. You grabbed it back. And that's why I'm delighted to be able to be talking to you because we need to do the same thing now in 2026 in November. So my honor and my deepest respect for you, sir.
Well, thank you. And I actually think you have a very real likelihood of pulling it off again this November. I'm very excited by it. I want to start with your own background because I think it's fascinating. You're the daughter of Cuban political refugees. As you were growing up in Miami's little Havana neighborhood, what were the conversations like and what was the sense you got about what had gone wrong in Cuba and what needed to be done?
Wonderful question. 3 things come to mind. Number 1, long live the Yankees. We love the Americans, which is the same sentiment that Marco Rubio has. You know, we come from the same neighborhood. He is also the son, first-generation American, son of political refugees, Cubans who came out of that island, which was the pearl, the jewel of the Caribbean. They had fallen into socialism, into that dream. They drank the Kool-Aid, and then they had to leave. And the sorrow, the sadness of living in exile is something that we have in our DNA, and I'm sure that Marco has it too. Number 1. But then what we are in the United States, oh my God, what a wonderful, glorious country. And that is the force and the power inside of my heart that it's propelling and sending me forward in order to help and protect the Republic. That's number 1. Number 2, living in Little Havana with nothing in poverty, but with hope. And number 3, Cuba, socialism. They drank the Kool-Aid. They really believed that Fidel said, oh, we're going to be in 18 months, we're going to be conducting free and fair elections. Sure. And Fidel, we know what he did with that island, and we know what the ideology does. The socialism, it's beautiful in theory, beautiful, it's miserable in practice.
Secretary of State Rubio, National Security Advisor Rubio, was deeply, deeply shaped by his parents' experience and his own experience. And I can't imagine anybody better prepared in this moment with everything going on in Venezuela and elsewhere. I can't imagine anybody who would be better suited to be Secretary of State at this point.
No, I agree. When it comes to the Western Hemisphere, we know what that story looks like. And we know with Venezuela, now that you mentioned that, when he said, stabilize, restore, and transition, that's exactly what we're going to do. And I was saying, Newt, that Trump has created a new blueprint, like a new groundbreaking model on how to deal with the Western Hemisphere, with our enemies and with allies, which is different to what we did in other parts of the world This time we're going to use their resources, in this case, the oil. We're going to take it away from them. We're going to use those resources to rebuild, to reconstruct civil society, the electoral system, and then transition and give it back to the Venezuelans.
There's something like 8 million Venezuelans who have left the country. Do you think a substantial number of them will go back once there's stability?
They're going to start trickling back little by little, because you know that you need political stability, which will bring then economic stability. And it's very important who is going to be running the show, which I do believe there's going to be Machado, but with the help and the support and the guidance of the Americans. Very important to leave the Americans in place, because that way she's going to be able to weed out the scum that was created for 25 years. The Chavistas destroyed the country.
You actually met with and interviewed Maduro. What was your sense of him?
I interviewed Fidel Castro, so I do have a point of reference, and I can say to you that Maduro is no Fidel. Maduro was just a puppet that was following instructions from Havana, because you know Havana, they do this quid pro quo. I send you the book on how to repress, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you send me back resources that I need, because I, Havana, only produce repression. And Maduro was just following the textbook, surrounded, mind you, by Cubans that were helping him and guiding him. That's why 32 Cubans died protecting Maduro. There's no reason why Cubans need to be protecting the Venezuelans. We know the drill. He is nothing. Delcy is worse because he's more intelligent. She's more an ideologue. She is better prepared. She speaks 3 languages. Therefore, she's more evil and more pernicious. So we got to be very careful with her and her brother, who is a psychiatrist, who happens to be running. They ran the secret police. They ran the jails, and they ran the repressive apparatus. While Diosdado Cabello, who is also indicted by the United States, was running the military along with Maduro and the Sun's cartel. So they had divided the chores, the division of labor.
Fidel actually, I guess, in part with Russian help, developed a model of totalitarian government which has been remarkably durable. I mean, they have really survived a lot.
No doubt about it. Fidel, 50 years from now, historians will look back and will look at Fidel as someone who learned not only how to obtain the power, but how to maintain it. And unfortunately for the Cubans, he is going to surpass Lenin and Stalin because he was able to create something that you call the invincibility of the system in the hearts and minds of the Cubans. Meaning the Cubans know that it's better to go into the Florida Strait and face the sharks because they have 50% chance of living. But they do know that they have 100% chance against them to confront the regime. And that's Fidel's genius, unfortunately, for evil.
So, given the collapse of Venezuela as an ally, how much pressure does that put on Cuba, on the current dictatorship, and to what degree does it weaken its survival ability?
It weakens it tremendously because now they are not receiving any more oil. At one point, Chavez gave Fidel 100,000 barrels a day for free. 100,000 a day for free for years and years and years when the barrel was $120. So the Cubans survived for 20 years living off Chavez and the Venezuelans. Now that has ended, but unfortunately we hear that Sheinbaum from Mexico is saying, hey, I'm going to step in. Why? And that's another issue we have now with Mexico, but that's another story. But right now, Venezuelan oil, zero, no more. And that is definitely, but you know, the Cubans are at the beginning of the end as well, because that regime is just hanging by a thread.
Standing with Marco, we literally were chatting about the strategy for getting rid of the dictatorship. So I know that it's very high on his list of what he is determined to try to accomplish.
Of course, we owe it to our grandchildren. I mean, we owe it to our grandchildren and we owe it to our grandparents.
That's actually a very good line. That is both the generation that fled and the generation that may have a chance to go back.
Correct. I always think that it's impossible for my grandchildren to live what my grandparents left behind, which is my concern. That's why I'm doing this immigration movement, because we need to secure the Anglo-American agenda. The American agenda needs to continue going forward for the benefit of my grandchildren, because my grandparents fled. And I remember, and Marco remembers his grandfather, who was extremely influential in his life, because I'm not sure if you know this, while his parents went to work, he was taken care of by his grandfather, who was telling him the horrors of communism and teaching him Spanish. It was the same thing in my house. My grandmother, Elvira, took care of me, taught me Spanish, and explained to me, I could see it in her face, the sorrow of what communism did to her.
Well, and I think those of us who did not grow up in Cuba really don't appreciate what a remarkable, beautiful place it was prior to Fidel. As you said, it was sort of the pearl of the Caribbean. At the time, was one of the great success stories. And I think the highest income in Latin America.
Had the highest per capita income in Latin America, close to Italy, Argentina with Peron. It was the jewel because of the proximity. And since we had the sugar quota that we were guaranteed, the Cubans had an influx of dollars coming in order to use it to the creation of that beautiful capital. If you look at Havana right now, is the perfect testament to Fidel Castro. The whole capital speaks about himself.
If you look at the cars that are there, it's a fossilized economy. It's just astonishing. When you're talking to folks who don't understand what just happened in Venezuela, how do you explain the difference between the things we did in the Middle East and the thing we just achieved in Venezuela?
It's like Marco said, is apple to oranges. Western Hemisphere, Venezuela, highly westernized, very much pro-American, had a very strong democratic system. They knew how to conduct elections and what civil rights meant. So they had a platform already of knowledge on where to sustain and to understand what is that we're trying to bring back. So it's not hard when you talk to Maria Corina and she proved to the world that they had won 80-20 because that 80% of the Venezuelans were voting to go back to democratic institutions. Look at Panama. This is the perfect example. Panama is Grenada with Reagan, but Panama with Bush. I was there, I covered it, and when the Marines were coming in, the Panamanian girls would just throw themselves at the Marines, at the towheads like you, and say, please marry me, you know.
That's wild. I did not know that story. A year ago, you welcomed Edmundo González Urrutia, who is the legitimately elected president of Venezuela, to the U.S. Capitol. What did that feel like? I mean, there you are at a moment in history when it looked like Maduro was probably permanent, and yet here's a guy who clearly had won the election.
I felt how unfair, but I knew that under the Trump administration, things were going to change. And even more when I would talk to Maria Corina via satellite from somewhere in a tunnel in Caracas, and she had been there for 16 months. Someone who not only Maduro said, no, even though you won the primary, you are not going to be able to be the presidential nominee because I just don't like you. But she won. And you, Maduro, you signed an agreement with the Biden administration to call the Barbados Accord, and you, Maduro, you committed to do free and fair elections, and whomever won was going to stay. But no, now Maduro changes his mind, and then Maria Corina, who then said, okay, I'm not going to be the presidential nominee, then why don't we give that opportunity to Edmundo? I'm going to be the vice president. And she orchestrated this whole organization where she proved that the tallies proved that they had won 80-20 And then on top of that, she had to go into hiding.
In the long run, to allow her to stay in power would be a huge mistake. She is the machine, it seems to me.
She is the machine. She has all the resources and the people, hundreds of thousands of people all around Venezuela who are able to take pictures with their phones of the tallies and count the votes truthfully and prove to the world that they had, with numbers, won the election. So she was smarter than Maduro and the whole repressive apparatus. That's why she deserves our respect.
Should the United States basically bring back Urusha?
I think that we should call for free, fair elections with international observers, the way we know how to do this, and just let the Venezuelan people speak, allow for those who are out of the country in Europe and in the United States to be able to vote through the consulates, and just let them speak. And all the political parties that want to organize to be able to go back and, just do it the old-fashioned way, the way we do it according to the United States Constitution. That's what I think we should do, and I do believe that she will be the winner once again.
Good. I've always admired you, and the first time I saw you as a candidate, I thought, you clearly know television. I had no idea how deep your knowledge was. Frankly, you look so young, it's impossible to believe that you've done all the things you've done.
Thank you. Well, it's because this country gives you the opportunity. It's equality of opportunity. And I knew because of what I had heard back at home, just like Marco. Look at Marco. Marco's Secretary of State. He's the National Security Advisor to the United States President in one generation, only in the United States. So we believed it, and I grabbed it, and that's why I'm here serving District 27. Believe me, I could be on television working a lot less.
And making a lot more.
I didn't want to mention that, but you are absolutely correct.
No, but it's true. It's true.
But you see, the country, we, the Cuban Americans, need to pay back as much as we can to this fantastic country and create the platform for the future.
When you first came to Congress, you said, quote, "I'm coming to Washington to fix immigration." You have a unique perspective on this, and I'd really like you to sort of share with all of us your thinking about immigration and how we need to move on from where we are now to get to a stable system.
Yes, and I would love for you to help me, because if you understand it, I'm sure that you can definitely influence and explain to the powers that be. I'm going to explain to you why. The Hispanics are the largest minority in the country and the fastest growing. These are numbers, right? The Hispanics are 23% of the population. There are 60 million votes available from the Hispanic community. The Democratic Party has failed the Hispanics repeatedly for the last 30 years. They have played political football with the Hispanics, and I can't prove it. And if you want, we can go Biden, Obama, Clinton, we can go there. Right now, we have an issue with national security and with immigration and with the economy. Number one, we need to secure the border. The border is secured. Now we need to see who and know who our neighbors are. We need to make sure that everyone around us is the good hombre. So national security. Number two, the economy. We need to provide to key sectors, construction, hospitality, agricultural, healthcare, the butcher houses, agricultural. We need to provide a stable labor force. That labor force is in here. That's the economy. Number four, immigration. We have a broken immigration system, the catch and release, the asylum system, the border, all that, it needs to be revamped and rewritten by the United States Congress. So since I am a legislator, I said, okay, so let's write something that fixes the problem. And on top of that, we need to welcome the Hispanics back to the GOP and make them and marry them and have them marry us, because we have the same values that are enshrined in the Republican Party. God-fearing, law-abiding, tax-paying, small government, pro-family, pro-God. So welcome them, bring them, and if they have the voting card in their hand, even better. So that's why I created the dignity legislation. Right now, you know that the word amnesty, what does that mean? No one really knows. But well, let's say that is path to citizenship. Okay, amnesty. So no amnesty in dignity. This is not amnesty. This is dignity. Dignity is not amnesty. So what's the plan out of this legislation? Pepe, you've been here for more than 5 years, which does not include the Biden migrants. If you have been here for more than 5 years and you have been working and you do not have a criminal record, then you can come out of the shadows, and we'll give you the dignity status. You need to buy your own health insurance. No federal programs available to you, meaning no Medicare, no Medicaid, no Social Security, no food stamps, nothing. Then you pay $7,000 as a fine for your crime, and you give me 1% of your salary for the next 7 years. 1% of your salary. Then you get to stay. You go home for Christmas, you bury your mom, and you get to stay in the country. And in the meantime, you will never be deported, and we will have secured a stable labor force. We will know who is everyone living in the country, and then ICE will have the opportunity to use the money that we gave them from the BBB. We have the opportunity to then use those resources to concentrate on the bad hombres and everyone who's illegal, that is illegal, who has a criminal record or is a murderer or a rapist. Then we can find you and kick you up.
I voted for the 1986 Act. You know, at the time, we thought you had to control the border, and we thought you had to have some kind of orderly process for people, some kind of way of knowing that people who were here legally could get a job and could be part of the system. I look back on it, and frankly, in part because the business community wouldn't cooperate, there's huge opposition to actually defining whether or not somebody was legally here. I worry very much. Lincoln said in 1858 that with popular sentiment, nothing can fail. Without popular sentiment, nothing can succeed. And I'm watching the aggressiveness of ICE begin to lose popular sentiment. It's not going to be sustainable. And I don't think people understand yet in the administration that there was huge support for controlling the border. There is substantial support for getting rid of criminals, but there's remarkably little support for going after people who've been working hard, raising families, going to local PTA, participating voluntarily in Red Cross blood drives. I mean, going after those folks is going to rapidly destroy any kind of majority for an effective immigration program. And I think your book and your legislation is really important. That's why I think it's really important that you've written a book designed to allow people to start reapproaching, thinking about this. And this idea of dignity is really important because being an American involves a sense of being endowed by your Creator that makes you different than countries where you're just under the control of the government. On our 250th anniversary, we really do believe that power comes from God to the citizen and then goes from the citizen to the government, but it doesn't come from the government to the citizen. And I think your new book, Dignity, Not Citizenship, The Truth About Immigration No One Is Telling You, I think that's a very important contribution. And I hope you will, as much as you can, go out and talk about it, because I think we have to break out of the current moment and get back to a much more constructive and much more positive approach, which does get us to legality, does get us to a controlled environment, but does so with people having a sense that we're treating human beings fairly and with dignity. We're not just running over them.
I would have not been able to say it better. I'm not asking our friends on the GOP side, my friends in Congress, to vote for citizenship. I'm not talking about becoming an American. I'm talking about giving them dignity so they can continue working for us. And this is like what I call Solomonic, now that you quote the Bible and Lord Almighty. This is what the Lord gives to every single individual. Dignity to live a dignified life in the promised land. That's all they want. And what does that entail? No government programs, not becoming an American ever, but being able to come out of the shadows and raise their head and not feel ashamed or in anxiety or in fear that they are going to be disappeared after 23 years of working on the fields. The problem is that there's a lot of fear among the legislators because there are other groups that will accuse them of, you're in favor of amnesty, you're in favor of amnesty. What does that mean? Amnesty is what the illegals have now. Free schools, free roads, and free hospitals. So what I am saying is, why don't we bring them out of the shadows and make them pay for their crime and make them pay taxes and stop giving them anything for free while they are contributing to those sectors that need them, construction, hospitality, and agricultural. This is good for the average American person. If you are traveling for business, you're going to go to a nice hotel where it's clean and it's cheap. And you're going to be able to go buy fruits and vegetables and meat and poultry cheap because the slaughterhouses are working. And they are being manned by people that are willing to do jobs that other Americans are not willing to engage in. No one is taking a job from the Americans. There are a lot of jobs available that Americans do not want to do. I mean, you've heard this before. But then on top of that, we have the Democratic Party. Now let's get into politics that has been infiltrated by this type of ideology, which is not very American, which is Mondami. This is democratic socialism. What do you mean socialism? And then my concern is that that is going to come all the way up to Washington, and we may have a democratic socialist president. The founding fathers will be very concerned if that were to happen. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell that pool of voters in the middle, the Hispanics that are growing, to be part of the GOP.
People who want to know more about the Dignity Act, how can they find all the details?
They can go to my website, Representative Salazar. They can just Google, or they can buy the book. They can go to Amazon and go to Salazar Dignity, and it's in English and in Spanish, and it's $1.99, the digital copy. And I have written it television style, the legislation and the explanation as to why this is needed in this country at this time. But to be honest with you, this is an audience of one. President Trump. And if you have an opportunity to talk to him, please explain what you think. You will pick the words that you need to use because you are highly influential. All I'm helping everybody is to help me help the Republic. And why it's an audience of one? Because the guy comes from construction and hospitality. He knows. And he's a business guy. And he dares to do things. Look at Venezuela. That no one else dares. He will be for immigration what Lincoln was for slavery and Reagan was for communism. I mean, GOP, I wrote it. Here it is, sir. Now it's yours. Dignity is yours, sir.
I love the way you just described that. That's good. That would appeal to Trump, that he can be for immigration what Reagan was for communism and Lincoln was for slavery. You've got the rhythm here. If I didn't know better, I'd say that your TV years had taught you a lot about communicating. I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening to both go to the book, but also consider writing your own congressmen and your own senators about the Dignity Act, because it's really important that we have this kind of a conversation. Dignity, not citizenship. The truth about immigration, no one is telling you. It's available at Amazon and elsewhere. And what Maria Salazar is doing is an important act of leadership that I think is vital, and I hope that everybody who listens to us today will decide they're going to get involved also, because the more people who speak up about this, the better off we're going to be.
Yes, we have the evangelicals, we have the Southern Baptists, we have the United States Chamber of Commerce, we have the manufacturing, of course, the agricultural. We have those sectors that are desperate for hands. There's no way that we're going to be able to continue being the number one economy in the world with the number one military in the world if we do not have economic growth. And how can we grow if people work? It's impossible. Newt, the National Association of Manufacturers, has told us that they have 400,000 jobs available. 400,000 jobs. You need to fill those jobs, and those people are here. And on top of that, like you were saying about ICE, we do not have enough agents to deport 10, 12 million people. We may deport, 10%, 20%? What about the other 80%?
The country won't tolerate it. You can't have that level of turmoil. You got to do things people will support because they believe they're right. And I think your approach with dignity is very, very important and actually very wise. So I want to thank you, Maria. You've been a great guest. You're always amazing. You've certainly lived up to your billing. And I will report to my daughter and my son-in-law that they're very fortunate to have such an intelligent and competent member of Congress.
Listen, we're fortunate to live in the United States of America. I've not asked the Cubans, the Iranians, the Venezuelans, the Nicaraguans, the North Koreans. We count our blessings and we're grateful. And that's why we need to do what we're doing so we can continue being grateful to the Lord Almighty. And may the Lord guide us. And thank you very much for those words. I mean, they come from a very important member, founder of the GOP, the way we know it. I'm going to deputize you so you can help me.
Thank you to my guest, Congresswoman Maria Salazar. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Penley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcasts and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Join me on Substack at Gingrich360.net. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.